Hi, welcome to Tech Beyond Gender podcast. As we move beyond the celebrations of International Women's Day, I wanted to create a space for a more honest conversation. What actually changes once the hashtags fade away and the events are over? Today, I'm joined by three incredible women who have each been a part of this journey before: Camy, Noor, and Amanda. All three have previously shared their powerful individual stories on this podcast, and I'm so excited to bring them together for a deeper and more candid panel discussion. Now, let's go beyond celebration and talk about impact. When Women's Day ends and it's back to normal, what usually sticks with you? So let's start with Noor.
Thank you, Meena. Thank you so much for having me on this amazing podcast. Yes, yet again with Tech Beyond Gender. So really appreciate it. I think you correctly point out the sort of the conversations and the impact that we have post these events. So International Women's Day or other calendar days on the in the year as well, right? It's not just International Women's Day, but I think what really comes out to me post these events is that a reminder that the visibility is still pretty fragile for women in sort of many different industries, including tech. For one day or a few days, I think women's voices are sort of amplified, but the question is what happens when the spotlight just moves on somewhere else. And what sticks the most for me is the contrast between sort of the symbolic recognition and the structural reality, a day-to-day structural reality. And I guess Women's Day is really important for that in terms of it creates a space for reflection, awareness, and bringing sort of the might of the machine together almost. Um, but what lingers for me is the sort of the responsibility. So how do we ensure that the energy of that day translates into everyday behavior? Because culture isn't built in, celebration moments. It's built in ordinary Tuesdays. Um, and I guess the positive part of it is that more and more organizations that I'm at least privy to are starting to sort of understand that. And I'm seeing quite a lot of leaders who don't want the momentum to disappear and who are asking things like, what now? And that question itself is progress because they've realized they've gone beyond the sort of the celebratory awareness of women in different industries, but what are we actually doing together to have an impact in your day-to-day lives? So yeah, that's what sticks out to me post Women's Day events.
Awesome. Amanda, I have a question for you. What does Women's Day mean to you this year, personally and professionally?
Hi, Meena. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here with the other ladies as well. So, what does Women's Day mean to me personally and professionally? Well, in this particular instance, so it's Give to Gain, isn't it, this year? Um, I was very lucky to get to go to the Women's Leadership Summit in Wellington. The amazing amount of women was kind of mind blowing, to see women from all across the industry. So for me this year, and one of the topics they had was resiliency, being resilient. And I think for a lot of women, that's a really key factor. We're resilient in our role at work, we're resilient in our message. So if we pick up what Noor said with her question, what do you keep doing with the momentum afterwards? I'm probably slightly older, slightly jaded compared to Noor. So I'm thinking, we you really need advocates in the business who want to keep that message going. So for me professionally, um, it is to continue to collaborate within this community with people like yourselves, with the women that I've just met at this leadership summit, who are all having a voice that makes a difference, that matters. This is not a quick fix. It is a long marathon. It's an ultra marathon. in actual fact, and it goes across all generations. And I suppose for me, that's what it means, is to continue the presence, continue the great work, continue the messaging, continue the carreros that we had, continue with the community joining together and unifying and having male allies as well, allies across all the businesses. It doesn't have to be male, it's just other allies that want to promote what we're doing and bringing together on Women's Day and thereafter.
Awesome. Camy, I would really like your view on how you feel after Women's Day. Do you feel more energized, hopeful, or are you slightly cynical about all these celebrations?
If I'm being honest, it's kind of like all of them. And it's because I'm building NZ Tech Relay, so I'm the organizational leader for NZ Tech Relay. So as a leader for a community-based organization, my responsibility to provide more inclusive spaces where women feel safe, and not just women, all people regardless of their gender feel safe and belong to, that just heightens. And I feel the work that we are doing and a whole lot of other organizations like Tech Women are doing, we have far more responsibility and we need to keep doing this work. But as someone who also has a day job and has had a day job in tech for like the last 15 years and has worked in several companies, I do feel slightly cynical. International Women's Day for a whole lot of companies can just be like a marketing and a branding exercise, like just a celebration and a bit of pig washing and that's it. There is no follow through. So I think that's where the cynical part comes through. But also like that is the stuff that is fuel for me to keep doing the work that I do through NZ Tech Relay. So yeah, so hope that makes sense. Like it is everything, but definitely like going back to what Noor was saying, the responsibility part, like as an organizational leader for a community, my responsibility to provide more inclusive spaces. So like a big part of what we do is being able to provide diverse female role models to the communities, the intersectionality of women in tech. And as you would know, Meena, I come from an Indian background. So being able to provide female role models that come from a whole lot of ethnic backgrounds, even expertise of tech, like from data, from AI, from testing, from development, like being able to provide a whole lot of those role models through NZ Technology conferences and meetups, like their responsibility heightens. So yeah, hope that makes sense.
Camy, you're doing an amazing job. I know you are
Thank
just
you.
going over and beyond, and you're setting like high standards for a lot of us in the industry to actually do something more productive. Like, I agree with what you mentioned with organizations, right? At times, I feel it's just a tick box. In most organizations, you see a panel discussion on Women's Day, and there will be few talks. But then what happens after the talk? I feel a lot of the organizations are willing to do something that's easy to do, right? It's easy to organize an event like that, or easy to organize morning tea. But when it comes to actually digging into the details, okay, you conduct surveys every year. So do you actually split your responses by gender and see what can be done, targeted initiatives can be done to make other genders feel included? When you start looking into that, you'll actually see not really, organizations are not really going to that extent to make a difference, right? I feel at times there's a difference. They sort of celebrate women on Women's Day, but when it comes to supporting women, I don't know whether organizations are doing enough. Any thoughts? Maybe we start with Noor.
It's a very good point. I think the sort of the differentiation between how how organizations celebrate and how they actually support women. So when it comes to, I guess the differentiation around what does celebration look like. So I know that at one point, maybe if we take 15 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, organization celebration was such a massive step towards acknowledging and recognizing that there is a gap and this needs to lift, the bar needs to lift when it comes to a particular cohort. So I think in those times that was quite brave. I think when organizations sort of came out to celebrate, to be visible, to have these DE&I policies from a corporate perspective. And I think with time, to Camy's point, is that it became more of a tick box. It evolved to a tick box branding publicity exercise for some organizations. And I think it was probably done very unintentionally. I think it just it was the evolution of celebrating awareness, visibility, and then it sort of started dying down to we just have to do this because it's a tick in the box. It's also a good evolution because it's pushing organizations to now start seeing things differently, right? So I think if you look at corporate cultures, corporate organizations, a lot of us are going through a hard period in today's political climate. So any DE&I initiatives, it's either not very well supported from leadership or it's not funded. And I think that is exactly when we come in. This is exactly why we're here. We're not here for just for the good and happy and celebrate. We're here for the tough times. So how do we go outside of the structural limitations of how much we can actually support women or other minority groups and actually make a difference? So at Microsoft, at least what we're trying to do in our sort of whatever capacity that we have is we came up with a program called 1K Queer, but it's now rebranded to 1K Belong because we want it to be a lot more inclusive of different communities. And that's a very simple objective of that is just helping students from rainbow communities and women from rainbow communities to break into the tech market, right? But alongside not just technical skills and tools, it's giving them good mentorship and role models connected to them so that they don't feel like they're the only ones. So what we were trying to do is actually bring in these students through the Microsoft training in tech skills, but also pairing them up with some really good mentors, but also mentorship, not that's a tick box exercise, just having 3 coffees and you're done and telling, them how to write a CV, but it's a commitment to seeing the entire growth and professional development of that student. So it's a one-on-one relationship that needs to go far. And the people that are actually invested in students like that. So we've been very intentional about it. And I feel like if we can even have literally 5 people from that group that have secured internships, are their authentic self, they bring their whole self to work, they are climbing up the corporate ladder if that's what they want to do, and actually starting to create a mark in the industry, I think we're winning. And I think there needs to be more of that. But the challenge in New Zealand is scale. We don't actually have a scale engine when it comes to, going out there with programs, basically outreach sort of communities or teams, having the tools at scale, branding and publicizing it at scale. We struggle as a country to have scale behind a lot of these initiatives. If we can solve for scale, there's so much that we can do together, even within the constraints of the current political environment. So yeah, I think that's sort of, maybe I went a bit off track, but I thought that holistically looking at what that means, celebrating and then supporting women, I think these are the ways that we can actually celebrate and support women in the workforce. Yeah.
Amanda or Camy, do you have any thoughts around this?
Mine is super short and controversial, a little bit like me. So mine is, I look forward to change when the Gen X's and the baby boomers go, and we see what the millennials and the Gen Ys do, Gen Zs, because that's what we've been working towards. Watching what you guys can do. It's time for us to go away and see if anything's stuck.
Yeah. So the work of women empowerment or self-empowerment at NZ Tech Rally, that's 365 days. That's how we show up every day. So like for me, then International Women's Day just becomes a great excuse to bring our community together and to celebrate some amazing female role models. Like, and we could literally do that in April or in May, or like as tech tech women does, like throughout the year, right? So, but yeah, but for other organizations, I'm not quite sure. Like the International Women's Day does heighten our awareness of the gap. But then, so at the individual contributor level, let's like, for example, if I'm talking about large scale companies, like the big tech companies, banks and government, like those, they actually employ a whole lot of tech population in New Zealand, right? So there is a much higher level of awareness that things need to change at the individual contributor level. But as you go up, I feel like there is not that awareness. So, and because they are the people who are making all of the they are the policymakers and the change approvers. So because they still have a whole lot of unconscious biases and their awareness is not that heightened, also they are not the ones who are actually running, like organization wide pay review audits and stuff. So nothing changes. Like there is a whole lot of awareness at this level. So that goes back to Amanda's point, right? We will say when the future generations get to the top, then we will see some actual change.
Yeah, I think I've even spoken with Amanda in her conversation that um, I don't really think that generations really matter as well, because I've heard other stories where recent university graduates have mentioned that their university projects are hijacked in their teams, where women are expected to actually do some admin work, right? So I just often think about, gosh, there is like much more deeper societal change that needs to happen. Um, and it's just a thought process, even in schools. Like, I think I mentioned it in several conversations about how one of my solution architect friend, her 12-year-old, came back from school one day and mentioned that coding is for boys and not for girls. And she has seen her mom working in tech throughout. And that was her perspective in New Zealand, which is quite shocking. So that brings me to another question about what one thing that often gets talked about but rarely acted on. Camy, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Um, Personally speaking, I feel like a whole lot of organizations promise that they're going to hire a whole lot of women and they're going to promote women to leadership positions. That's always talked about, and it's pretty much like on every brochure. But that actually doesn't happen. That does not happen when it comes to hiring and when it comes to interviewing. The conversation always goes back to hiring the best person for the job in that particular instant, which is much more nuanced. So that and it, I've had that personal experience as well. So that's one thing. And again, because there are no audits, there are no stats, like there is nothing to actually measure against, like what has changed. So that's one empty promise that keeps on coming up. And just like nothing much happens. Like when it comes down to actual hiring, nothing actually happens.
Yeah, I agree with this because I remember having conversation with someone who really was an aspiring CTO, CEO, but she was saying like, okay, they want like 10 years or 15 years of experience in senior leadership roles. But then how can you even compare? Because 15 years ago, the situation was even worse than what you would probably see now, right? So you're never going to win that game. Right? Any thoughts, Amanda, on this?
Can you see it on my face? Like I'm going. Okay. So I'm backing up both what you and Camy just said. So on what Camy said, absolutely, there's a lot of talk and not a lot of walk, right? Which really irritates me. And with what you said, Meena, so 15 years on a CV, 15 years ago, I'm on maternity leave. There's your break. Then what happens? So the structure is nonsensical when there is only one half of the male female divide that goes off and has a baby. You know, and we can't do it at our desk and whip it out in like 20 minutes and then get on a Zoom call. Even when you run the country, you still needed 6 weeks off and a supportive husband. Do you know what I mean? So this irritates me. We have been, we have joined into a structure that is created for men, men's success, because that's how it was, you know, 150 years ago or however long ago when they started all these businesses. And then when women came into the industry, what, my age ago, you know, or 50, 60 years ago, we are still breaking in and making waves. But our role as the, you know, the child carrier, child bearer, maternity. But I mean, this country is so backwards that we're only just getting maternity and paternity leave that's even worth anything. When I left England 20 years ago, you were paid for 6 months full salary and 12 months because they knew that you were part of the economy, you're part of the business. Paternity leave wasn't a thing. But so this is a massive part of we're just overlooked. And then this stupid stuff about 15 years experience. Well, obviously that limits it to all the men, because when did they go off and have a baby for 6 months or a year and a half? They didn't. And if they do, when they do come back into it, are they given the idea, you know, are they the ones that come back into the workforce after a year of 2 years of being a parent and suddenly, you know, penalised for having that? I'm not so sure. You've heard me speak about this before, Meena, where there is a perception with, you know, hiring when a woman comes into a room, and I have checked the stats on this, and there's no official stats, but there's definitely been some work on this because it would mean a lot of honesty. When a woman goes for a technical job in IT in my industry, it will be assumed that she will be a better team fit. So they want to test her technical nous. Flip it. When a guy comes in, they're going to assume he's got the technical nous. Still going to test him, right? But then they're going to go, is he the right fit for the team? And straight away, you've got that going on as well. So if you're a mum and you've got 2 children and you're coming back to work and you've asked to do 30 hours a week instead of 40, even though we can work from home, we can work around it, you can guarantee that 80% of the women that are coming back into work are going to arrive at 9 and leave at 3, because they have lost 2 years of their career where their husband hasn't. Now, if we go into gender roles, he's providing as well. He's in this providing space. That all makes sense, but we have not created a corporate environment that supports us as the baby future economic making part in any kind of way that supports us to do that. It's getting there, but wow, it's slow. You look at other countries, you know, Sweden, Norway, England. We won't talk about America, but there are so many countries that really, really have got the ball. You know, they've got their finger on the pulse. They understand how this is working. I hope, I envision that in a future, for future generations that are the millennials and the Gen Zs as they come through, they're much more balanced in this. But Meena, when we had our conversation about the university and how they split those roles, I nearly cried into my coffee. So, you know, I mean, that's how I feel about it. Passion about it still.
So, no, going back to what you mentioned a few minutes ago about how there is general awareness these days because it's being spoken about and stuff. Now, from your perspective, why do you think that the progress is feeling so slow even when the awareness is high?
I think there are a couple of things, right? You look at, what does progress mean? What does awareness mean? And what does it mean to actually have an impact? So I think if we split it and really think about it, I think the reason why it's slow, even though there is awareness, because awareness is a construct of culture. You know, it's actually about embedding a different culture, driving a different culture, but it's not a structural change, right? So you, if you want to provide awareness, absolutely, people need to know what they're doing. But if it doesn't translate into something that's structural, which is change, then it doesn't mean anything. It's very much like having a strategy without execution is basically madness, right? It's a strategy on a page, no execution behind it. It's just a page, right? So it's exactly the same sort of concept here, is that yes, we have awareness. It's driving a different kind of culture, but what's the execution behind it? What is the actual impact? What are the tools? What is the structures that we're putting behind all of this? And I think um, you can believe in equality and still sort of operate within systems built decades ago with different assumptions, but progress also feels slow because it requires redistributing opportunity, visibility, and power, and it takes intentional redesign. Um, and so that's one point. So about awareness being cultural, not structural, and then intentional redesign. The third part, which I feel, and just coming back to the previous question that you asked, Meena, was what is that one thing that really sort of gets talked about quite a lot, but really acted on? I think sponsorship is one of those areas that is really sort of acted on. Lots of people talk about sponsorships, when it comes to events, when it comes to supporting certain tick boxes. I think that that's there. But when it comes to sponsorship, which is risk taking on someone else's behalf, that doesn't really happen, right? We talk about supporting women, but fewer leaders are sort of willing to attach their reputation to a woman's advancement when she's not the obvious traditional choice. Now, I'm talking about few leaders. I have been aware of so many leaders that don't do that. They actually put their neck out to at the chopping board to progress some of the career progression for women that are not traditionally fitting the box. And what's encouraging to see is that because there's a level of awareness, there's more accountability in a certain way, that a lot of the executive teams are now formally embedding sponsorship into leadership expectations. So when the sponsorship becomes measured, it then becomes normalized. So I think
Mhm.
those are the few things around how you can get momentum and the reason why it's slowing down. I think we need to move away from the cultural construct to the actual change construct, structural construct.
Can I
Yeah.
just add on to that as well? The just extending that as well, the sponsorship and the risk taking was really interesting. We talked about that at the women's leadership event as well, and obviously that can also lead into business policies as well, like corporate policies, but also government policies. But in what you were saying, Nora, as well, you obviously work for a large company where there is movement. Your point about DEI was spot on as well. It's the first thing, one of the first things that will fall because it's not deemed as a bit where we can put our money and our focus in when actually it really should be. But it's one of the branches of the tree that falls off when you're trying to consolidate and look inwards, right?
Yeah.
So I the benefits of working for a large global corporate is that you do have much more accessibility
That's right.
to things. Now, that doesn't make up, or I don't have no idea what stat it is, but the rest of the market is not made up of those opportunities that you
Yeah.
would get in a global corporate that maybe had more of a focus, particularly in 2024 rather than 2025 and 2026. But so that's interesting for me as well to discuss. Like there are lots and lots and lots of New Zealand and Australian companies who work over here that don't have those sponsors, wouldn't even be able to pick them in a lineup because they haven't really considered it. They're just not in that sort of space.
Exactly. And this is
Absolutely.
why. Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
Noor.
I was just saying that's so spot on. I think I feel quite lucky and privileged to be working for a big corporate like Microsoft, or we move across industry, so Amazon, Google, etc. All of that, the big techs. Um, I think it becomes a responsibility for us, to be honest, a bigger responsibility then onwards, that if we have access to these networks, tool, IP, you know it then becomes a bit of a responsibility for us to bring that global IP and localize it for the betterment of New Zealand and Australia. Obviously, Microsoft is an Australia, New Zealand business. So we want to be a lot more supportive and pave the way. Obviously, we're not perfect. We're still continuously learning how to do DE&I better. We actually learn quite a lot from our partners. So we've got a very sort of strong culture around collaboration with partners. We have a massive ecosystem of partners. So, for example, the Pride Parade that we do every year, Microsoft has a float. We go in March, but a lot of the times we're basically asking our partners to come along with us. Or International Women's Day, we bring partners to come and do talks and panel discussions, etc., and try to have those mentorship programs in alliance with those sort of agencies. Let's face it, New Zealand absolutely has a private and public sector, but we're still very public sector driven, even in private sector. So we get, stuck and blocked by a lot of those sort of that bureaucracy and red tape that exists. Again, I'm not saying that's an excuse. We need to do better, but I think if we could, as big corporates, big techs, come together as a massive engine to drive that change, to drive scale, I think we can do so much more than we're currently doing together as individuals, or just individual siloed agencies.
Just to add to that, so just to add a kind of like a little bit of a different point to what Noor is saying. At the same time, I feel a whole lot of people in New Zealand working in tech should also feel empowered to start building new systems. The startup market is just so diverse, and there are so many opportunities for people for women, for everyone to just step up and start building new system. It takes a very long time and a lot of manpower and resources to change an existing system, whereas to design a new system, to start building your own company, to start building, even if it's just a meetup group, like it's just so easy nowadays, and there are so many people willing to help. So at the same time, a whole lot of people should feel empowered to go out and start building communities, building their own startups, like with the vision that they actually had. So
yeah, but
yeah.
Going on to that, Camy, I mean, even the statistics of women that are creating startups is extraordinarily low.
It is extraordinarily low.
Talking to Ministry of Awesome and Electrify the other day, and I've actually got the stats written down in my book. I could actually find it. It is really low. And then you go for women of color,
yes,
ethnicity, and it's an even smaller percentage, because the other thing that we've got to remember, and here we go, I'm going diverse again. Sorry, Meena. But the other thing that we've got to remember is women's financial ability to actually do this, right? So depending on your time of life and your relationship status and where your money is going, it is much harder. The challenges are a lot more real for a woman than it is for a man. It's a ridiculous statistic that is very heavy on in favor for the male just to do a startup. But I think that's also because of our responsibility, our social and family responsibility, that hasn't shifted with the corporate and business construct that we are continually trying to battle with in this world.
Yeah, and this is why it becomes much more important for us as conference organizers, as people who are providing role models, to bring people from a whole lot of diverse backgrounds. And to your point, I've been to conferences that are for women, and it's like I had to wait the entire half a day to see a woman of color. This was in New Zealand, and I stopped going to kind of like those female founded conferences after that. I was just like, no. Yeah.
Yeah, that is something very common here. Some unique challenges that we as women of color face.
Yeah, and to that point, right? So kind of like, even when it comes to because I think your question to Noor was why is the change hard? And I spoke about this earlier as well, right? So change is also hard. It's not because we do not have enough female leaders who are policymakers. I personally feel like we do not have enough competent and compassionate female leaders up top who are willing to extend the ladder to a whole lot of other women and support the women throughout their organizations. So yeah, you need to have the right
Exactly.
people.
I think you're right. And the other thing that I've seen in my career, and obviously I'm a bit of a different generation to you and Noor, a woman has to work really hard to be noticed and to be seen and to be heard to get a position on a senior leadership team. But men in our industry work hard for it, but they are promoted and entitled to their space around the table. And I think women do have to work harder for it. Now, personally, myself, I've yet to experience working for a woman manager who, is suppressive or oppressive or tries to block you. I've had it quite an opposite experience, but I have got friends in this industry that unfortunately, Camy, have worked with women who, are way more Sigourney Weaver and working girl than we need to be. And I think that comment goes straight across not just women in industry, but the diversity, male, female, age diversity, ethnicity, and physical ability as well. So I think diversity is a really broad point. And I can tell you from my experience, when I'm in a room, there tends to be 7 or 8 older gentlemen of a similar age range, one female who was the head of HR, and possibly a token Indian who might run the technical team, and then there's me. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's still what I see.
Yes. Yep.
Absolutely. So now I have a question for Camy. So what are women still carrying at work that often goes unseen or unacknowledged?
So over the last few years, Meena, you've been running this TVG podcast. I feel like you've had a whole lot of conversations, like with a whole lot of women on this topic, and you guys have covered such really, really good stuff. One of the things that I've been noticing lately is that not within NZ Tech Rally, because we just do not have that culture, right? But the organizations that I work with and I work for is that women in leadership positions specifically, and probably more in bottom management, like as you're starting to kind of like get up to the top management, they feel this responsibility to hold everything together, and it is and they get very stressed about it. Like I have been consistently noticing over the last few months, some of the folks that I work with, they carry this great pressure to hold the entire team together. We all have to get together. And it's just really hard for them to like understand. It's not your job. We are all adults here. We are all like in our 30s, 40s, 50s. People could have a whole number of reasons why they do not want to get along with the other person or with the rest of the time. It is not your job to actually make sure the entire team gets together. And maybe that comes because we tend to be, like as women, we tend to be mothers and, like elder sisters. So we just have that, but that just, I feel that unconsciously transfers to our workplaces. Now, I do not do that. Because I'm a very self-aware person, and of course I'm kind of like I'm in circles, like in women's circles where this is often talked about. So I do not do that. But NZ Tech Rally is different because I'm the organizational leader, so it is my job and it's my responsibility to make sure that happens. But to companies that I work with, that I feel like we do not get paid enough. Like if that's part of the job, I should be making more 20K, like or whatever my salary is. So that's one thing that has been coming up for me a whole lot lately. Yeah.
I wonder if this emotional labor of or like expectations to take extra responsibility increases after Women's Day conversations as well. Like we sort of inevitably just land up taking those responsibilities, or just even without us taking those responsibilities in our team. Say, for instance, minute taking or organizing birthday parties or morning tea or organizing lunches.
I certainly look, I think not just International Women's Day, post those events, I think a lot of events, anything to do with DE&I think women generally, we do carry that emotional labor after that, because you're reassessing, you're rethinking, etc., all of that. But I think the challenge here, I guess the answer to some degree is redefining what strength looks like when it comes to women. right? And then that is, like you say, Amanda, that is a marathon. That's not a sprint. That's not going to be achieved overnight. That's a very deep rooted mentality change, personality change for some women, and also just cultural change within
Yes.
themselves.
Generational and cultural.
Generational change, and it's there's for some women from different backgrounds. I come from I'm originally from Pakistan, grew up in Dubai, so I come from a moderate Muslim family, and I'm also gay. So reconciling your sexual identity with your religion, because I didn't want to leave both sides of my identity. I'm a proud gay practicing Muslim. But those
That's
things.
one huge conflict right there.
Yes.
Before you even start anything else.
Exactly. And that doesn't come overnight. Didn't come overnight for me. To be at peace with my existence of those identities. But I think when you redefine strength, I think the most powerful thing for women in today's information age or information overload age is balance, right? Balance is we underestimate how powerful balance can be, because when you are balanced, strength, you redefine strength, because strength is usually defined with, to women in particular, is around endurance, being constantly available, constantly impressive, always on the on. But in today's information overload world and relentless pace, balance is not a luxury, right? And balance is power. So if you know where to pause and where to push, that just kind of helps with, obviously, your inner conflicts, your inner cultural conflicts that you may have, like I did. And it delivers excellence without burning yourself out. And it also makes you comfortable with failing, right? Like, so what's wrong in failing? That I think that's also another topic that's, we can talk for ages about, failure.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, Noor, there, what is like balance? These are words that are considered feminine, right?
Yeah.
Because balance and failure and vulnerability, do
Yeah.
you think they crop up on the SLT of a board? No, those are words
Yeah,
that
they
are not
don't.
shared around, and they should be, because they're
But
human.
100%. But I've also seen, and this is a behavioral shift that I've seen within team dynamics, is that people that now have balance in a chair, in a board, in SLT, ELT, everyone gravitates towards that personality these days, because they are feeling not anchored within themselves. And it's because of the world we live in today.
Yes.
Political climate, fiscal climate, redefining what the modern human actually looks like in today's day and age. Everyone is losing an anchor. A lot of people. I mean, I would honestly, if someone comes to me and say, I'm 100%, my mental health is amazing, I'm always anchored, I have no problems, that's bullshit, right? Like that's a.
I want what you're having. What are you taking? What's in your
What are you
tea?
smoking? What are you smoking? So like, and so that's why when you express you give an aura of balance, people naturally gravitate towards you. And that's power, I feel. And that's something women can do so well if they redefine within themselves what strength actually looks like. So for me, I guess, tangibly, if we could define what strength looks like, redefine it, redesign it, and bring it about with balance as the core skill or a sense of existence, I think we could win a lot of battles here.
So I'm coming in again at you, Noor, from my perspective. Here I
Go for
come,
it.
the disruptor. I think these are beautiful words, and it's a wonderful perception. And I think it's something we all try for. Well, then your challenge is whose perception of balance, whose perception of, come in calm, and we come in honest, and we come in balanced, and we come in like this, because we have a perception of what that looks like.
Yeah.
And men have a perception of what that looks like. It's like the perception of success.
Yeah.
You know, so a man's perception of being calm is to be able to take on a huge amount of work and then come up with the right decision, possibly not even going to anybody else about it because they've already worked to a point in their life where they understand that they're entitled to have the right answer at the right time because 30 years of promotion have told them that they're right. So their perception may challenge your perception. So again, I know I'm devil's advocate, but
No. You're absolutely right. I don't even think that's devil's advocate. It's how do we actually achieve that state
Mm.
of nirvana when you have so many sort of limitations and conflicts, etc. I think, and this is where I feel, and I've had this conversation with Meena in our previous podcast, the male allyship is so important to bring about that change, right? So if you have a male ally sitting in that SLT, at the board level, ELT level, saying that I consciously, intentionally want to redefine what strength looks like,
Yeah.
then people follow, right? At the end of the day, people follow. And this is on us as to how do we build that muscle, that arm of very strong male allyship that is redefining these definitions, right?
so this is what I hope to see
Yeah,
in the
Mm.
next
yeah,
generation,
yeah.
because I've spent quite a lot of this week listening to the words male allyship and it's starting to stick in my throat. Because why should we? It's like the words that we were entitled, we were given the vote,
Mm.
right? So that also annoys the crap out of me. Who decided that anybody could give anyone else the vote, right? Because it's generational, cultural, organizational.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of when you're building your own systems, then you can choose who you work with. Whereas in an existing system, there's a whole lot of people who are with that fixed mindset and very conservative attitude and of a certain demographic and certain age and certain race, right? So there is like a whole lot of unconscious biases that they are fighting that they can't do about. I'm going back to Noor's point of like balance. With Meena, you kind of like you do a whole lot of mindfulness stuff as well. So that like that quite aligns, like as a woman, as a female leader, how I show up every day. That actually matters a whole lot for me. And that like going back to the point of balance, like for me, it's a balance of being and doing. Um,
Yeah.
early in my career, I used to be, like that super ambitious woman, like go, 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 go. And now as I'm kind of like approaching my 40s, I'm just like, no, a whole lot of me being a female, as I accept, like I am in a feminine body and I'm very proud to be in a feminine body. A big part of me being a feminine and embracing my feminism is about being. Is just about being able to feel my emotions, like if I need a timeout, I need a timeout. I'm gonna go cry. I'm gonna go do whatever the heck I want. um, and a whole lot of that also means sometimes that I need to protect myself, because when I'm surrounded with people, like who are not supportive of that, or they have absolutely no idea of what a strong feminine can actually feel like, because all they have seen is, like very kind of like very masculine feminines who are like go, 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 or maybe wounded feminines who are just always complaining. They haven't seen what a balanced feminine look like. So they feel very uncomfortable and very threatened. So I have to remove myself. And I think this is why I always go back to like, it's not just having more women. It's about having strong women leaders who understand what being a strong feminine actually feels like. And feminine, I feel like most majority of the strong feminines, they always choose to lead with compassion and with community. Like majority of the women that I look up to, they always build other women around them. So that's something that I very much admire, and I hope to be like that one day. And I think Noor is right. We need to, like, more and more people need to kind of like, that needs to be highlighted, and people should feel comfortable, like that conversation around balance should not be just, like, what is that now? So yeah, hopefully a whole lot of people will listen to this podcast, and hopefully the thing is like the younger generations actually do get that. They are not into kind of, like that go, 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 go mode. They actually are very much into being, which is so nice to see. So hopefully as they become CEOs and CTOs and organizational leaders, like as they climb up their way to the SLTs and ELT, we will see a whole lot of, like work culture change. And probably we will stop
I mean,
celebrating IWDD because we do not need it. That's the default.
well, wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say as well is if we do look at the progress that you know, the generations have made. So as a Gen X, you know, you're, you know, Noor and Camy, you're the generation behind us, and you know, the results of our wonderful feral lives that we lived. You know, but what I've seen, which is coming through, that will be completely natural and normal for you guys, is we talk about menopause, we talk about neurodiversity, you know, we talk about burnout, we talk about midlife crisis, we talk about imposter syndrome. 10, 15 years ago, nah, none of that. You know, when I was, you know, working at, about 5 or 6 years ago, I arrived at my office and I put a little fan on my desk and it had menopause, Amanda's menopause fan, because, and then people were like, what's that? And we started talking about it in Toastmasters, and there was so much diversity in the company that when we would talk about puberty and menopause up and down the scale, fathers and husbands would come to me and go, do you know what? My wife is going through that. Is that possibly what she's going through? I hadn't considered. And it was just like illuminating something that's either not spoken about because of our culture or because of our, you know, women, even women didn't talk about it with each other. You know, it was some sort of curses, you know, getting older, having menopause. Everyone knew you had a hot flush, but that's just one out of 83 different symptoms you could be delighted with all day, you know? So we sort of were, it's getting better, but it is the marathon. It is painful, you know. And Noor, you've got so much what's, you know, what's happening with you and everything that you're bringing to your lens. You know, you've got a heavily weighted generational, you know, line behind you.
Oh, no,
Yes,
thanks.
100%.
I think you're being too kind, but
No,
thank you
not
for
at all. Have
that.
I been kind at all today? I don't think I have.
No, but I think what comes with that is the responsibility of driving that change. Because you know, I cannot just go around and say, hey, I come from a very diverse background,
Yeah.
I've gone through so much conflict. But what am I doing to help others and paving the way for others? Because that's when it matters.
Yes, it
It's an
does.
absolute complete waste if I don't do anything about it to help
Yeah.
others, right? It's a massive social responsibility, and the reality, and this might be a bit more sort of you know, philosophical monkish type thinking, but you know, in my sort of culture and an Islamic sort of practice, when you do something for someone else, you do not tell other people about it, because that is doing a disservice
Yeah.
to the person you're and
Because
paving
then
the
you're
way.
doing it with ego instead
Yeah,
of
exactly.
yeah.
It needs to be a selfless, completely non-ego driven practice, right? And it needs to be silent but powerful leadership to pave the way for others. And unfortunately, a lot of the times you see that even people that are trying to pave the way for others and creating that agency for others, they're promoting it as a way to self-promote themselves, right?
Yes.
That I feel isn't the best way to approach it, because I mean, I work with particularly with the Rainbow Muslim community, and they obviously need a lot of help around access to people, to resources, to reconciling religion with identity, with you know, family pushing back, all sorts of things. But they want to stay anonymous, and they also don't want to feel like they are completely victimized here, right? So when I do go out and help them, and myself alongside a lot of other people, we don't talk about it to others. We don't say that we're doing this, we're doing that. And then there's more and more that come. And there's more and more people. You create more access without promoting it. The moment you start promoting it inappropriately, you stop the access as well.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah.
And I don't think people talk a lot about this, right? That
Yeah.
what is your social responsibility? And when you have that social responsibility, what is your responsibility and ethics to promote it, right? You have, there needs to be some level of accountability there, which I feel is just doesn't exist. It's
And I
just like,
also think, Noor, there's that stepping into your brand. It's
yeah,
like
Yeah.
this is who I am, and I quietly carry that power in me. But it's also, again, for me, it's the die by the sword and the walk the walk. And that's what you're doing through just, your existence in everyday life. Do you know what I mean? And Camy, with
Absolutely.
what you're going forward and doing. And then, Meena, you
Yeah.
set this up because you want to have a voice that's being heard,
Yep.
and then, I'm aware that I can be quite, I can irritate people with some of my, not weirdly, not in the women community,
Yeah.
in the women leadership. Like when I'm on a call like this, or when I'm surrounded by 300, wahine that are of every creed and color and background, it's like I've found my people,
Yeah.
but we're supposed to find our people there so we can go out and be strong elsewhere, right?
What you just described, Noor, your
Mm.
theme of balance just shines through.
Mm.
Right. And like how Camy was also mentioning about the balance, I think the more composed we are, the more balanced we are, the more aware we are of ourselves, the strength that we carry can just be very invincible.
Mm.
So our presence would speak rather than the gender
Yeah.
we carry. And I think that's more important, be it like you could have gotten it from your religious background, whereas I get it from meditation or mindfulness practices. I think no matter what source they come from, that balance can actually help us create a more inclusive society in
Mm.
one way or the other, right? Now,
Yeah.
I'm a bit mindful of the time. So I'm just going to switch the topic. So, what is one simple action organizations could take that doesn't require huge budget? Camy?
One simple action that organizations could take is maybe just do, so they could do is, I don't know, maybe it will require resources. I mean, they should already be doing what I'm going to suggest, right? So maybe like the pay reviews throughout the organization would probably be a good thing, which they should be doing anyway. And if they can just go ahead and publish the result on their intranet where everyone can see that, that creates a whole lot of awareness for a whole lot of people and will spark a whole lot of conversations. So if they're not doing it already, they should be doing it. That is one thing that they can do. And I think it's also important to publish those results into your with your employees, because I know a whole lot of organizations do it, but then those stats are just kept to the leadership. They're never openly shared. So just being transparent, like doing those exercises and being transparent with the results with all of your employees, top to bottom, that will be very empowering, not just to women, to a whole lot of other communities as well.
So, Camy, that's interesting, right? Because when in my previous permanent roles, when I've had pay reviews, the message that you get is don't disclose your pay, your increase in pay to anyone else in the team. It's
Yeah.
like, why?
I've always disclosed my pay to my peers in confidence, in context. In context, it's not that I'm going around telling this is how much I made, but whenever it comes in context, I've never hesitated. So you can then that makes you think, right? Like who is actually benefiting by not sharing, by not being transparent about the pay, and who is that messaging benefiting?
I love that as a disruption technique.
Mm?
We should see more of that, I reckon.
Yeah. So we often hear that women need more confidence, right? When we were talking about balance as well, that brings confidence. What do you think actually needs to change? Is it women who need to change their confidence, their attitude, their behavior, their perception needs to change? Or what else? What is that you think actually needs to change? Any thoughts on this?
Sure. I think the question needs to change. Not from you, Meena. I mean, from society. I think, it's whose perception of confidence. I've watched women carry a baby in one arm, a toddler in another arm, 4 packets of shopping, and is coming out, coming into a car park and find their car in 20 seconds, and they're followed behind by some guy on a phone. So I'm very confident that that woman's got her shit together. It's just that maybe she is deemed through generations of suppression, oppression, and being questioned that she doesn't have confidence. I challenge that her confidence has eroded because confidence can be put into aggression or assertive which is fine when you're a fellow walking in with all your ego intact, you know. But as soon as you're a woman, now I'm not saying all men are like this, and it sounds like I hate men, which I don't. It's just that I work in a patriarchal environment, and there's a lot of this stuff that goes on. You know, some of my best friends are male, gorgeous, wonderful humans, you know, and I've been blessed to work for some amazing men. But I've also experienced a lot of this stuff.
And just to add to that, like confidence is actually eroded. Meena and I have talked about this in our podcast. Growing up in India in a highly conservative society where girls, the moment a girl child is born, we are a liability on our parents, right? Um, we are told from a very young age, you're a girl, so you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. So the confidence, literally, the stripping of the confidence is
Correct.
from day one. And for me, when I arrived here in New Zealand, I was 25, and it was crazy how free this world was, you know. So to be in New Zealand for the past decade and to be here, to be living as a fully empowered woman, that's freedom for me, and that's why I love celebrating International Women's Day, you know. But like confidence, again, that's I think it's a nuanced question, you know. Like depends who are we talking about. Because for a whole lot of women, it's what Amanda is saying. A whole lot of conservative environment, they strip the confidence out of your soul, not just of your body. You know, like there is so much shaming involved, as just to be born as a girl child. And for me, I had to let go of all of that shaming and brainwashing as I grew up.
This is amazing. So, we have sort of spoken about a wide range of topics, right? Are there any conversations or topics that we are still avoiding because they are uncomfortable?
I believe that the topics that go on in the IT industry and senior leadership is that they want to do the tick box to be seen to be very diverse. And I have experienced far too often across global and smaller companies that the leadership team are not as diverse as the multi-layers underneath. So this tough conversation is, are you looking at yourselves, leadership team? Because what we have again is you have words and you have action. So the layer below you, diverse, multicultural, everything, you know, absolutely DEI, fantastic. But the example that we're looking upwards, I can't see myself on there. How do I get there? Who do I have to go through? If my confidence is eroded and my natural presence has already been out of the industry to go and have a family, and I'm social caring and not financially equipped well enough to get to where you are.
I think, and this is beyond technology or the industry. I think if we look at the country as a whole, right? And it's not just New Zealand. I'm sure lots of other countries are very similar to that. But I think it's the topic around exclusivity versus diversity. So I do struggle in certain areas around the exclusive clubism of certain things, right? So I'll give you a very, very funny and small example of it, right? So I'm a petrol head. I love go-karting and racing, and I grew up in the Gulf Middle East, so you kind of tend to have these kind of hobbies. I went, this time around, I went back home, met my family in Dubai, did my jet skiing, went go-karting like crazy. And, I'm like, gosh, I need to come back to New Zealand and get into classes again, get some lessons to do go-karting and just, enjoy my life there. And when I looked into getting just lessons in go-karting in New Zealand, it was very difficult to pinpoint how I could just call up someone and book an appointment, get lessons done, and off I go, right? It was, you need the license, you need to be part of a club, you need a membership of this, you need a membership of that, no contact details, nothing. It's very exclusive, right? There's only a certain kind of person that can, and I'm not talking about gender or anything, it's everything, right? It's the exclusivity around it that I found quite interesting. And I don't know if it's an intentional thing. I can't say that it's intentional, but it felt like an exclusive club, and I'm like, well, you can't break into things that you, even as a hobby, you know, because of the clubism, because of the exclusivity in these areas. So I feel like it goes above and beyond just D&I issues. It goes, we don't address the clubism, the exclusivity, the classism, which even in classism, you can be of different colors. But if you're a part of a certain club, a certain class, you have more access to things and you get things done easily. And I feel that's across every industry, every sort of network, every, I don't know, even sports. And, there's so much.
Even education, or
Education,
generational wealth gets people into.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not a New Zealand thing only. I feel
No.
like it's a global thing. But I think New Zealand, because it's so small, it's a lot more obvious.
Yeah.
And so I feel we don't talk about exclusivity very much. We all talk a lot about D&I. We don't talk about clubism. We don't talk about exclusivity. We don't talk about classism. Which I feel like that conversation needs to happen, to identify these problems. Yeah.
Nice. Camy, your thoughts on this?
Um, so going back to your question, I think I've got two things. So going back to the theme of the panel, like International Women's Day. So we discussed about how we all fail, but from my experience talking to a whole lot of female colleagues and friends over the years, a whole lot of them do not even go to the events because nothing changes for especially the events that that the organizations that they're working for, because it's an exercise in pink washing. It's just a branding and marketing exercise. And social media has probably, because social media is mostly a whole lot of noise nowadays. And there is this pressure, like this organization is, like running a panel discussion. Let's find some diverse, senior leaders, and let's just put a panel together so that we can put some post and like make some noise on LinkedIn. So it just becomes like a marketing. So a whole lot of my female colleagues, like even I would not go because I know, like I would hardly ever see and a senior Indian female leader or a senior Maori Pacifica, you can even kind of like forget about that, because they're so far behind in the line, right? So that is something that we haven't talked about. So I wanted to highlight that a whole lot of women do not feel that they actually belong, or they don't even trust that there's anything that is going to happen. So a whole lot of them do not even go. And in my experience, I've worked for a whole lot of organizations, especially the large organizations, like banks and government and stuff, because those are some of the oldest and some of the hardest structures to change, right? There, women even don't even go and participate in the women in tech groups. Like tech women they would rather go and participate in tech women, which is completely outside the borders of their organization, because they find far more community and companionship in that, or they would come to NZ Tech Rally or some other. But within the organization, like there would be like women in tech groups or like meetup groups, but women don't go, again for the same reason, because a whole lot of that is just tokenism. A whole lot of that is just an exercise in, like brainwashing and pink washing and a marketing and branding exercise. So I did wanted to highlight that. And with a whole lot of IWD events coming up now, there are people like Tech Women and us who are actually trying to kind of like do it for the right reasons. And the thing is, we do it throughout the year. Just this week just happens to be a great excuse to do some more of it, like what we do throughout the year.
So, if next year's Women's Day was truly different, what would that look like?
I feel like as much as we would like the organizations leaderships to change, it's going to take a very long time to change that. It's most more like, as we've discussed, it's a generational change. So I feel like from where I'm standing, more and more, if we can reach more and more women, and if we can build more and more communities, even if they are at not in even if these women are not in leadership positions, we can kind of like show them, what Noor was talking about, what a strong feminine looks like, what strong female leaders look like, what a strong female circle looks like, like that would be amazing if more and more women can hear that message and can feel empowered, like the ultimate point of this entire thing is self-empowerment, like women should feel self-empowered. They do not have to, like for me, they should not wait for the change to come from top to bottom.
Awesome. Your thoughts, Amanda, on this? If next year's Women's Day was truly different, what would that look like?
a whole bunch of male leaders that currently run a lot of the public sector and smaller technical businesses walk up to their women and say, "So, what are you doing for International Women's Day? And what are we doing for International Men's Day this year?" Because that won't happen.
But that would be amazing if it did.
It would be amazing.
Yeah. So, Noor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about it while you guys were talking about it because you have some brilliant answers. I think what I'd love to see is tangibility, right? And these sort of events. So for me, selfishly, the cohort of women that I love to invest in particular, as in the future, which are students, young girls. If we could launch things like programs to connect students to mentors, connect students to internships, to connect students to life coaches, things like that, then there's something more tangible that comes out of it as well.
Mm.
And also, mentorship for me is a big thing. Again, we spoke about this, Meena, in our last podcast with one of the students as well. The reason why it's so important is that you need others to lift you. We can't do things alone. I know we're independent and we're absolutely confident and strong and wonderful and amazing, but we do need others to help, especially when you're in that stage of your life as a student, as a young girl in particular. So um, when you connect those kind of women or young girls to mentors like that, what they do is they should be creating opportunity for them. So it's not just, I'm going to help you write your CV. I'm going to give you some life advice. It's like, I'm going to connect you to this person who can then help you find a job, who can then help you find, I don't know, access to certain tools, who can give you an opportunity to go and talk somewhere or public speaking if that's what you want, So actively connecting young girls to mentors that create opportunity for them from the get-go. I feel having that level of tangibility within those events would be a complete change for me. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
I hear what you're saying, Noor. I've been working on that too. Like, even I was thinking about the same. Like, what else can we do? Like, something more substantial, something more tangible. So, yeah, very soon through Tech Beyond Gender, we will announce some stuff that you're working on. So, now, before we close off, I have a question. Now, what's one thing that you'd love listeners, especially leaders, to reflect on after this episode? Camy?
For me, for all leaders, especially for female leaders who are in position of influence and position of change, and especially policymakers, I would want them to do like a self-check within themselves. And this goes back to our conversation on being a strong female leader. For me, compassion and community is what makes. And again, when I say community, that there is no pressure, but the thing is, women do tend to lead through community. We have seen again and again and again from Jacinda Ardern to a whole lot of local examples. Like we have seen some of the best strong. There is a superpower, and it is not a burden. So if those female leaders can do a self check, how much compassion they are showing up every day for all of their colleagues, and especially their female colleagues. Um, and how are they improving the lives of the women around them. And I mean, the same applies for male organization leaders as well. If they can also do a self-check, how much unconscious bias do they have? Or maybe just go online and do like an unconscious bias training towards women, because men do not realize how much unconscious biases they have towards women. So yeah, that would be my message to leaders who are listening to this podcast.
Awesome. Amanda?
Yeah, I'm with Camy. And I'll take it one layer further as well, is for leaders to stop being in their ivory tower and creating diversity on the layer down from them, and to start being vulnerable and creating that diversity in the table around them. It's not something that happens to others outside of your control. It's something that you create within your control. Give people something that they look up to, because some of us are tired of being the diversity in the room. It's been too long. We should be sitting there, seeing people like ourselves who have value, around the table.
And Noor?
I can't top these answers. It's a lucky last, but I think one of the things that I would love leaders to look at, male and female, and whatever, however they identify as, I think, you know, how do you make failure comfortable for you people so that they're not scared of failing? I think that is not talked about very much, as sort of a culture, as sort of almost policy to some degree, right? What is the treatment, and how do you set them up for success the next time? Is that so? I think that's a big topic to think about and reassess for leaders as to what sort of culture they're creating for people who actually, well, everyone fails, right? Like no one's, we're humans. We're not flawless. We will fail at some point, so how do you make that comfortable? Yeah.
Do you have one, Meena? Do you have a
For me?
question? Do you have an answer to
Yeah,
your question?
so that's good. So my passion is like when leaders listen to this podcast, I want to just make them stop and think about, okay, what did I do within the organization for Women's Day? Was that just a tick box exercise? Or am I ready and prepared to take it to the next level? Right? A lot of the times it's like, okay, I've done this, morning tea organized, I've got a panel together. I probably excused my female staff member to go and attend to her child when the child was sick at school. Is that all? There's something more to do than that. Right? Cool. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Camy. Thank you, Noor. Thank you, Amanda. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm not sure about you three,
I
but
did.
it was
Yeah,
really
so
good.
much.
Any final thoughts to our listeners?
This is
I agree with Noor. I reckon I'm all about vulnerability and failure. And I think, kindness isn't weakness. So step into it.
Hmm. Yeah. I think my message to your podcast listeners is like all of this content, courage is contagious, and what you are doing, Meena, is very courageous. And the more and more people listen to this content, it heightens their awareness, and that builds courage, and that builds confidence, and ultimately you are a self-empowered individual. Forget about not just a woman. Everyone should feel self-empowered, right? Every human should feel. So I feel like people who are listening to your podcast, they should just keep listening to more and more of this content, and they should probably even reach out to you to be on the podcast. Like why not? Um, and they should find communities. They should find like Amanda's Tech Women, us. They should find communities that can support them more, and the more communities you can be part of, the more diverse you become, and the more radical open mindedness you develop, and all of that ultimately leads to self empowerment. So yeah,
And Noor, lucky last.
Okay. Well, I don't, again, I can't top this, but I'm just simple, I guess. Go be fabulous because you are fabulous. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. That's just as simple as that for me. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you once again.
thank you, Meena. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.